All right, hour number one will be live on the Raiders YouTube channel. Say that with me. Raiders YouTube, hour number one. We're just going to have this up as a raw file. You'll be able to hear it. Hour number two will be live right here on my channel, and we'll be taking calls and get reactions. Hour one, it'll be Paul Gutierrez from ESPN, Vinnie Bonsignore, and Amber Theoharris. Those are our guests. You won't be able to see them, but you'll be able to hear them. We're kind of doing our Raiders rundown show. And then hour number two, we'll get back to the pure radio show. Let's do this.
Just win, baby. Commitment to excellence, the will to win.
I love being a Raider. You know that, JT. Everyone who knows me knows it. Raider Nation knows it. So what it means to be a Raider, it's a very fondness and a very strong passion, a pride in my heart. I will fight for this team to the end of my breath.
It's time to have a game. It's time to have a performance for the fans at Allegiant Stadium.
Welcome to a special edition of Raiders Rundown. I'm JT here at headquarters of the Silver and Black in Henderson. A lot happening today. We got a lot to cover. Big guest after Antonio Pierce yesterday was released of his services as head coach of the Silver and Black. As I begin, I wish nothing but the best for Antonio Pierce, his entire family, what he was able to bring to the Raider organization, and so many conversations we had in this studio where he brought the energy and the excitement. He galvanized the Raider Nation. And we have the statement put out by the Raiders yesterday that we'll show you here on YouTube. If you're listening, we'll tell you all about this as we're live on all Raider platforms. And for the coach, he brought everything that he had here. Part of the statement here, if you're taking a look at it, is Antonio grew up a Raider fan and his Silver and Black roots run deep. We are grateful for his ability to reignite what it means to be a Raider throughout the entire organization. And I wanted to make sure that everybody understands what Coach brought here. Every time we saw him on the road in this building, he had high energy. He wanted to win more than anybody. He was a Raider fan. He had an opportunity here, and I thought he brought everything to the table to try to make the best of it and win. There were a lot of things that went against him this past season, from injuries to the quarterbacks, all the players that were on injured reserve, or the players that were injured and couldn't come back as fast, and he gave it his best. And I wish him well because he's a good man, and he brought everything to this position as the head coach of the Raiders. But obviously the business decision was made. Mark Davis made the decision along with the people he's talking to within the building, and now the Raiders are going to move on in search of a new head coach to the Silver and Black. And this is going to be a fast search, not so much on a decision coming up here, but you got 6 other teams now interviewing as many candidates as they can. The news that we can bring you today is that Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of Detroit, has accepted an invitation for a virtual interview. That reportedly is coming up on Friday. He's been one of the top candidates around all of the NFL, and also the Raiders put out a request to interview Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator of Detroit, and also Steve Spagnuolo. Steve Spagnuolo, the longtime defensive coordinator for the world champion Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm sure there's going to be more requests out there. Look, everybody, this is a really fluid situation. And what happened yesterday, whenever a coach and or coaches lose their job, you wish them well and you thank them and you just wish it worked better. Every coach that's ever been hired in this organization had the will to win and wanted to come in and change everything and win championships. It didn't work out for Coach Pierce this year. The 10-game losing streak, again, as we mentioned, the injuries and what happened along the way. But the heart and soul of Antonio Pierce will be felt in this studio, in this building for years to come. And we wish him well. So as a sports talk host and in my position with the Raiders, I've been in this position before. And you got to sit back and you got to talk about what could happen next. And the league is changing. And you can look at it two different ways. Do you want a veteran coach who's been around, such as Pete Carroll? Looks like these Bill Belichick rumors seem to be false, or at least conversations having with Bill Belichick in a potential position going forward. And then there are young coordinators and established coordinators. And they'll all have an opportunity, the ones who are invited for an interview, to come to Henderson or do it virtually and try to get in a position to be the head coach of this team. We know the struggles of the Raiders recently, but I will tell you this much. This is an organization and a team that has had great coaches in the past, Hall of Fame coaches in Tom Flores and John Madden. And whoever they bring in along the way, they're going to try to bring in someone who can quickly turn this around. And a lot of that will have to do with who's going to be the quarterback potentially, all the free agent money that Tom Telesco has to spend in the draft. The Raiders have the number 6 pick overall coming up in the draft here. So as we begin, Paul Gutierrez is kind enough to join us. You know the work he does at ESPN, ESPN.com. And Paul, we talk a lot. We have you in the studio often. Walk us through the timeline on the decision that Mark Davis made.
Yeah, JT, thanks for having me. It's tough day when a coach loses his job, and you saw exactly what he was able to do in terms of tapping into that DNA and getting the fans excited as far as being a fan when he was growing up, and getting the fans and getting the players excited last year. But it just didn't work out this year. Saw Raiders owner Mark Davis real briefly after the game on Sunday, and nothing was on the record, obviously, but it was obvious that he had some decisions to make. And then when Antonio Pierce came out and spoke on Monday, he was operating as if he was still the coach. And that's really all he had to go on at that point, because he had yet to have that meeting with Mark Davis and or Tom Telesco, potentially even Tom Brady, new minority owner who's going to have a lot of say in things to go. So you go through that whole process on Monday, you go through it Tuesday morning, and the decision ultimately there was made to move on. And, there's two ways to look at it. It's one way is just kind of thanking Antonio Pierce for what he did in terms of getting things going again in the positives that he was able to accomplish. And the other is you look at it as it's just a fresh start. It's a great opportunity for somebody to take it to the next step, to take it to the next level.
The access you had to Antonio Pierce, we all know that he brought tremendous energy. The team was always ready to play and play hard, and they bought into his vision here. The 10-game losing streak really hurt. The Raiders won 2. They lost that final game against the Chargers. So looking back at his tenure and what he did from a positive side, some of the decisions in game, it's just unfortunate that he didn't have more healthy players. Maybe if there was a different scenario with the quarterbacks. I don't do woulda, coulda, shoulda here, but I just love the energy that he brought and what he tried to do to help this organization.
Well, there's no doubt about that. And I wrote about it on ESPN.com yesterday, kind of going through what happened. When did it go sideways? And you start basically at the beginning, as any story, you start at the beginning. And you look at when he took over. He really reinvigorated not only the fan base, but that locker room. The post-victory cigar parties. After the finale last year against Denver, when he had everybody in that locker room that was banging the drum for him, from Raider legends like Jim Plunkett, Jim Otto, Ted Hendricks, Charles Woodson, Richard Seymour, all in there advocating for him to get the job, and the Raiders chants and everything else. But at the end of the day, what's the slogan, the logo of the franchise? Just win, baby. And that just didn't happen enough. So it's a production business. You appreciate Antonio Pierce for what he did to tap into that DNA again. And then you look, okay, well, is it time now to move on and try to get forward? And it's that opportunity again for a fresh start, a restart, and go forward. Because like you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of questions, whether it's the head coach, the offensive coordinator, the quarterback, you got all the free agents on defense. It really is going to be a good opportunity from the glass half full situation here.
Paul Gutierrez is our guest. And Paul, as you know, it happens around the league with everyone. Good coaches get head coaching jobs, and they have about a year and a half to win games. And no matter who you are in this league, that's pretty much the timeline. And there are some owners that make quick decisions because they see something and they want to change it quickly. Other owners may give a coach another year or so, but Coach Pierce came in here ready to win. There were a lot of coaches here behind him trying to get him going, help him out along the way. And it's unfortunate it didn't work out. So let's talk about some of these head coaching candidates. What you're hearing around the league here is the Raiders took a day for Mark Davis to make the decision and formally move on from Antonio Pierce. And now there are a lot of other teams competing for these same candidates.
Yeah, and the number one name there, and obviously you're looking at the biggest X factor here, right, is Tom Brady, and how much of an influence, how much of an impact, how much of a voice is he going to have in that room? And I'm going to say he's going to have a lot. And so right away you start connecting dots, and Mike Vrabel is pretty much the first name that pops up due to their relationship back in New England together, and how he's advocated for him in the past when he got the job in Tennessee. Ben Johnson's always going to be an exciting name considering what the Lions have been able to do with him as the play caller. Aaron Glenn, same situation, but on the defensive side of the ball. Liam Cohen is a name that's also going to create a lot of attention because of what he was able to do with the Buccaneers offensively. And then you kind of go, like you mentioned earlier, old school guys that have been around the block. And I don't know which way Mark Davis wants to go with this, but you got the Pete Carrolls that are out there. Yeah, he's over 70, but he's still got the vim and vigor of somebody much, much younger. And then, there's also, again, this name is never going to go away. John Gruden. I'm not saying it's a done deal. I'm not saying it's not a done deal. I'm just saying, just think about it, because, Mark never really wanted to move on from him either time that he left. So, and he seems like he's kind of found his rhythm again on social media and the things that he's doing out there. So just some names just to kind of keep an eye on. And, and there's always some dark horses going to come in out of nowhere too.
Well, Paul, where I stand on this. I've always said this, especially in Vegas, this is an amazing job for a lot of reasons. Yeah. No state taxes, a brand new stadium, a brand new world-class facility. Players do want to play here. And there's a lot of other organizations where players want to play. But with Max Crosby, a cornerstone player, Brock Bowers just had an incredible year, a record-breaking year. And there's a lot of good pieces on this team. So if you're a candidate, and I say this about Jacksonville too, Jacksonville's got unbelievable talent on that team. You look at the Bears with Caleb Williams. If you're a candidate and you're looking at Las Vegas, what are some of the pluses that the Raiders have, not only with the talent already on the roster, but the money that could be spent in free agency, and maybe most importantly, all the draft equity the Raiders have?
That's it, exactly. And you mentioned it too, no state income tax, right? Mm-hmm. And you have you have a top 6 pick, and you have an owner that obviously he wants to win. And as Mark Davis has always said, it ultimately falls onto him as to why they haven't been able to win the way that he wants to win. So when you look at the potentials there and the positives, it's still one of only 32 jobs in the world. So you got that. You got being in a world-class city, Las Vegas. You got all the accoutrements, so to speak, of what Las Vegas offers in terms of a franchise with as Bill Belichick himself said, it's the Taj Mahal of practice facilities. So you got that. You've got the draft. You got over $100 million in cap space. Doesn't mean they're going to use it all, but you have it at your disposal. And you got 2 pretty good foundation pieces on each side of the ball, with Brock Bowers having the type of rookie season he did at tight end, setting records. And then you've also got Max Crosby coming back, and he should be healthy and good to go next year on the defensive side of the ball as well. So there's some building blocks there. It's not a finished product by any stretch. There's a lot of challenges in the AFC West when you already have those established quarterback coach connections in Kansas City, Denver, and LA with the Chargers. The challenge is uphill, but if you're up for that kind of a challenge, you have all those things at your disposal as well.
Paul Gutierrez is our guest. He's also now a Hall of Fame voter. Congratulations on that. That's a business card I want to see down the road. Frame that one. Yeah, I want to follow up with the money that's available and the amount of players that the Raiders need to re-sign in-house. It's a very important point here because a lot of players are not going to be back. You would think just the best of the best who are under contract, but those players might have options with other teams here. So Tom Telesco, who's been in that locker room, is around this team, is a really good evaluator, has got big decisions to make before they spend money in free agency. I mean, you look at the players here that are currently on the roster and the notable free agents here. These are some big ones. Trayvon Merrick. I love Isaiah Palomal, as we mentioned that. And then you get to Robert Spillane. So how important is that as a priority as the Raiders are going to put their draft board together?
Well, it's huge. I mean, that's actually the first thing they got to do, right? Is figure that out, because the new league year starts a month and a half or so before the draft. So once you figure out who you're bringing back, then you're able to figure out, okay, now do you draft best player available? Do you draft for need? And if you're drafting in the top 10, as Tom Flores told me a long time ago, you really don't have that luxury of drafting for need, because you got needs all over the roster. But if you're able to identify which players you want to bring back, to me, the big one is probably on the defensive side of the ball, Robert Spillane. Even as Antonio Pierce said the other day, they got every dime, every nickel, every penny out of that contract they signed him to because of how well he played over the past couple of years. So, that to me is step one. Number one, obviously, is who's the coach. Then you go to the coordinators. Then you go to the free agents, and you just kind of build that way.
Well, I love the quarterback conversation because we respect Aiden O'Connell. He's here. So that's not going to change. He's contract friendly. He's still on that young contract, but you start hearing the rumors about veteran free agents. So from Aaron Rodgers to Sam Darnold, guys that you know, if the Raiders chose to bring him in, they would help the Raiders win. They're just flat out really good right now, or they're legends in the past, or getting a quarterback in that first round. You know, I spent a month and a half, fans were talking about losing or maybe dropping games to get a better draft pick. A 6th pick overall is really good. If you want a quarterback at 6, you're going to get a quarterback at 6 because you can move up easily from that, trade off that pick. You probably got to give up another one. And we'll have time to talk about that more in the offseason. But I think a coach looking at this job here is looking at this quarterback availability from Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, Sam Darnold, and the ones that jump out. It gets pretty lean pretty quick here. If you want one, the big name is Sam Darnold, or even Aaron Rodgers now, as he's in a situation now which is very unstable with the Jets. Paul, what are you hearing about free agent quarterbacks or potential for a trade? There's a lot of good quarterbacks in this league that the Raiders could trade for.
Yeah, again, it all comes back to that first step we were talking about. Who's the coach, and what does that coach want to do, and what does that coach has to work in conjunction with not only Mark Davis but Tom Brady and obviously Tom Telesco as well. So if they did want to move up in the draft, it's going to be, you would think it's going to be a little bit easier this year, going from 6 up to get a quarterback if you wanted to. And obviously there's that connection between Shedeur Sanders and Tom Brady. And that's, again, you just start putting all the tea leaves together and trying to read them and see where they are. But if you go the veteran route, again, who's the coach and what relationship do they have with that person? What's the relationship like between Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady? I don't know, but that's something to investigate once we figure out who the coach is. And I know this is the fun part of the season, so to speak. The off season is just the speculation game and trying to figure it all out. And does this fit? Does that not fit? It's there. If you're not in the playoffs, that every team is going through the same exact situation right now. So when it comes to the Raiders, obviously Aiden O'Connell has shown that he can be a starter and he's serviceable, but they need an upgrade there as well. We'll see exactly where they go.
Paul Gutierrez is our guest. I love the Brady conversation. The greatest quarterback of all time. He's now an owner. He's not a consultant. He's an owner for this franchise. And you better believe he's going to have his eyeballs on what's going on there with this great relationship with Mark Davis. But when it comes to Mike Vrabel, they're tight. And they've won championships together, and that's more than a phone call. These are people that travel together, are friends. Their families know each other here. What do you think about Mike Vrabel as a fit, as he seems to be a top candidate overall? Raiders just had a defensive-minded head coach in Antonio Pierce. Patrick Graham, as of now, is obviously here. He's interviewing around the league for other positions. Mike Vrabel seems to be a big name floating around the NFL.
It is a big name, but he's also linked to the team that he played for, right? The Patriots. So it would be something to get him in the building, at least, just to show him and see what he would have to offer. Again, any coach coming in, especially if you're a defensive-minded coach, the first thing that's going to set off alarm bells, or at least it should spark some interest in your mind, is looking at that list that you had up earlier about all the defensive free agents. Because that's something that if you're a defensive-minded coach and that's the unit that you're going to really be taking care of, you have to notice exactly who's going to be on that roster coming forward, because there's a lot of decisions to be made. Vrabel would be a fit. It would be, again, the same defensive-minded guy, the same guy that is a player's coach, had some success in Tennessee, and then that relationship with Tom Brady. Again, I don't know if we can actually put a number on how important that is now going forward, because that's the ultimate X factor now.
Liam Cohen is the name. I was on nationally last night on Sirius XM, and we're getting calls on that from the tree that he comes from with McVay and what he's done in Tampa. I mean, here's what he reminds me of. He reminds me of McVay, obviously Kyle Shanahan at a younger age, guys like Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins, a guy that you're looking at this resume and you're saying, wow, look at where he's been. what he did with Levis at the University of Kentucky to get him to become a high pick. The Rams jump out at me in 2022 and before that, the Rams, it's Sean McVay in every meeting, and he is a wizard there. And then what he's done with Baker Mayfield, okay, inheriting Baker Mayfield this year, and Baker has never been better with Mike Evans. This is a candidate that a lot of people are talking about, not only for the Raiders, but other teams.
Yeah, and with him, the resume is impressive, obviously, but you also have to wonder, are the Raiders ready, willing, and able to make that commitment to another first-time head coach? So that might be a negative. It might be a positive. Again, we don't know where they are right now in this process, but that's the one thing that stands out to me is the fact that he's never been a head coach at that level yet. So, yes, he has done some things. I mean, maybe he gets to bring Baker Mayfield with him, and they kind of solves all the problems on numerous levels there. So who knows?
No matter who the Raiders hire, the number one candidate in the NFL is Ben Johnson. He's the hottest name out there for what he's done with Dan Campbell, along with Aaron Glenn, who the Raiders have requested. The Raiders are going to virtually meet with Ben Johnson here coming up. As I look at his resume, he's got a really nice resume, especially in Detroit, passing game coordinator, offensive coordinator. Goff's playing at an MVP level. St. Brown's a great wide receiver. They run it excellent, and they throw it off play action. And he's a guy who seems like he wants some control. Chicago wants him badly, and maybe he doesn't like the connection with their front office. Very intrigued with Ben Johnson and what he's done, because if the Raiders go down this road and they have a connection here, it's going to be about a quarterback. It's going to be about an explosive offense. And I think a lot of Raider Nation is excited about that.
Yeah, and everything I just said about Liam Cohen, about never having experience, and that might be a black mark against him, throw that out the window with this guy because of what he's been able to do and what he's been able to show, not just for 1 year, but for numerous years as a play caller, and for a team that right now, is probably one of, if not the Super Bowl favorite right here and right now. So that is a guy that is just, he's I'm not even gonna say he's flavor of the month, because he's been flavor of the past couple of years in terms of this. What could this guy do if he has his own organization, his own program, his own team to run? So that is the guy that's the hottest name out there, obviously. And if the Raiders can pry him away and take a look at that, that could be something. But again, you get him in there, you still have to address the quarterback position as well.
Yeah, one more. Aaron Glenn, from a great player, a rah-rah guy, but the scheme that we saw against Minnesota was incredible. And they've had more players on IR and missed games than any team. The Raiders were second, as you're aware. So the Raiders got decimated by injuries. So did Detroit, but Detroit had better backup players and reserves. And Aaron Glenn kept that team together. And they're my favorite to win the Super Bowl or get there. What a job he's done. And the Raiders requested a meeting with him.
Yeah, and it speaks again to what he was able to do with so many players being injured and being out. So that would be real interesting, again, to bring him in, go from another defensive-minded to a defensive-minded coach, and somebody that has paid a lot of dues in the NFL. So when the Raiders decided to reach out to him to see, gauge his interest in it, that speaks volumes to what they think about him as well. And if Detroit has its way, then neither of those guys are going to be available to mid-February anyways. But to get ahead of the curve, and when they're on their bye week, get a sense of what their interest is, and just kind of go from there. So they could do worse than that as well.
Paul, let's wrap it up with the fans. You have a tremendous platform, multiple ones. You engage with the fans all the time like I do, and they've been going through a rough road. This was a tough year, but you know how loyal Raider Nation is. And as I say this, I want to give a shout out and hope everyone's okay in Southern California. You know that area well, where all the fires are down there. There's a lot of Raider Nation there. It's a big, big spot for a lot of our viewers and listeners. And that being said, the fans are always going to come back to the Raiders. Even the ones who are frustrated, but they love the silver and black. What do you think the message should be to them as the Raiders start this process again?
Well, it's interesting because, that's the number one thing, right? It is the fans. Without the fans, the organization really doesn't have much. Any team in the NFL. It's built on the backs of the fans. So the message to the fans should be that they're still trying to get this right. They're still trying to win. It's been a couple of years since they've been in the playoffs, a couple of years since they've had a winning record. So I'm not going to say that they have to nail this, but that should be the goal, right? Is that they want to have to nail this thing. So if you take your time, and as I said at the top, it's not good news for Antonio Pierce and that staff, but it's also an opportunity now for a restart, especially in this division. where three of the other teams in this division are all going to the playoffs. So now you don't want to fall too far behind. You got to get this hire right, and you got to tell the fans, hey, we are trying to win. We are trying to do right by you, and that to me is what the message should be, going to the fans that have stuck with this team through thick and thin.
Well, thanks, Paul. Thanks for joining us on Raiders Rundown. You're really busy. The content is going to be great coming from you. The Hall of Fame's right around the corner. There's a draft. There's a new coaching hire. Appreciate you. Thanks for joining us. Always like having you on.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
That's Paul Gutierrez. Follow him at ESPN.com for his content, obviously Raiders.com and on all the Raider platforms, as this is a very fluid situation now, and things are moving fast. And we're going to tell you what we know when we get it. And yesterday, Antonio Pierce was relieved of his duties. We wish him well and future success. When we come back, Amber Theoharris will join us, part of our Silver and Black production team. What a great job she does on Raiders Game Day. She has a lot to say also. She's opinionated. She's all over the stories of today. So we'll have her coming back here on the other side. And then we'll have Vinnie Bonsignore, who covers the Raiders from the Review Journal to our morning show on Raider Nation Radio. A lot to cover today. JT live from Raiders headquarters. It's a special edition of Raiders Rundown. All right. 1 second. Yeah. Yeah, good. I just wanted to ask you what you want to talk about. You get my yeah. Yeah, right. That's good. That's right. Yeah. Anything else? Just tell me. All right, everybody. You're seeing some cool stuff today. Unfortunately, Antonio Pierce was fired. We were on live yesterday when it happened. Now we're on live again to react to it. And it's a big national topic. So those who are jumping in for the first time, welcome to the Bricklayers, JT Raw. And then hour number 2, we're going to open up the phones. And we hope everybody jumps in hour 2. Because I want to take phone calls. I want to hear from Raider Nation. So we'll do that. But this is in-house Raiders content, Raiders Rundown, which will be put up. And right now it's on the Raiders YouTube channel. And then they'll cut it up and make a TV show or put it on Raiders.com. So I'll be more focused to talk to you, everybody, here in hour number 2.
500+ yards. 7-8 games for him as a rookie. I mean, that's huge. Tight end of the league right now. The guy in the pass game is absolutely killing it.
I mean, Brock Bowers, I was a big fan of him. The guy's a winner. The guy's a playmaker.
Brock Bowers just passed Jerry Rice for the most receptions by a Raider in the first 11 games of the season.
He's got his man at the 5, into the end zone. Touchdown, Brock Bowers. 33 yards. Brock in his prime in the end zone.
I feel like he's on track, to be better than myself.
Bowers jump ball to 35. Touchdown, Raiders.
He's going to be a leader. You've seen him motivate his teammates and his person every day. Can't believe it's here when I get here and it's here when I leave. He puts in the work. He's positive. He's motivating. And to me, he's clearly that next year Raider. And so, guys, that's right.
Well, I appreciate you guys. Obviously, your guys' work doesn't go unnoticed. I know the season's been not what everybody expected, but at the same time, just seeing everybody's energy and commitment to what we started, it means the world to me. I just want to let you guys know myself personally and the Jordan brand. We've come together and we're gonna get everybody a pair of Jordans in the building. So, yeah, absolutely. I believe in you guys and everything we got going moving forward. So just want to say I appreciate you guys and go Raiders.
Thanks, Max.
Very cool. I know.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Jesus said we make it his, so we make it his now.
Just win, baby. Commitment to excellence, the will to win.
I love being a Raider. You know that, JT. Everyone who knows me knows it. Raider Nation knows it. So what it means to be a Raider, it's a very fondness, a very strong passion, a pride in my heart. I will fight for this team to the end of my breath.
It's time to have a game. It's time to have a performance for the fans at Allegiant Stadium. Welcome back to this special edition of Raiders Rundown. I'm JT. Amber Theoharris joins us from Silver and Black Productions, Raiders Game Day. What a job she does for us. And I was thinking of you this morning as I drove in with the fires in Southern California. How are you, your family, your friends? You know, a lot of people living in that region. What's happening?
Yeah, a lot of Raiders fans in this region, and we're praying for everybody. My family's okay. Woke up in the middle of the night with the house completely smelling like smoke. I'm just south of the fires. There's ashes all over my car, but we're not in the direct line of the fires, so we don't believe we're in danger, but it's very scary. And if you look off towards Malibu and towards Pacific Palisades, which is just, about 15 miles away from me, you can just see the sky is entirely black. And so we're praying for everybody as they continue to fight these fires.
Well, we appreciate you making time for us, especially on a day like today. Let's start with Antonio Pierce, no longer retained. We got a chance to know him well. He brought everything to this job. You got to know him a bit. A tough day for Antonio Pierce, who really gave everything he has as a Raider.
He did. He gave everything he has, and I think he can leave with his head up, and I think he's going to do a great job somewhere else in the NFL with this experience. And now the Raiders move on and the search begins. And I think this is a tremendous opportunity for the Raiders to really get this one right and to not only get it right for the head coach, but to bring in a quarterback that could be with the franchise for a very long time. Because when you look around the NFL, look at all the teams in the playoffs, whether it's a rookie like Jaden Daniels that completely turned around a franchise overnight. We saw that with CJ Stroud last year with the Houston Texans going from worst place to first place. It can happen when you select the right quarterback. And if you look around the playoffs, name one team that has an average or subpar quarterback that made it to the playoffs. That's what this league is about, and that's what the focus should be for the Raiders going forward.
You nailed it. And Amber Theoharris is our guest. You nailed it. There's so many things that have to happen now. I call it threading the needle. Everything's got to be great. The quarterback, the draft, free agency, the signings, and we'll get into that. But you got a lot of contacts around the NFL. When you hear about the candidates, Ben Johnson has accepted a virtual meeting with the Raiders. That's a big deal. He seems to be a top candidate around the league. You know Tom Brady's connection to Vrabel, Mike Vrabel, who's the coach, Aaron Glenn. The Raiders have reached out to, and we found out that the Raiders reached out to Steve Spagnuolo, someone very familiar with what's happening in this building from a competition level.
I think those are interesting candidates because, I've thought a lot about where I believe the Raiders should go and in what direction and what would be best, especially bringing in a new young quarterback if that's a priority for them in this offseason, which I believe it should be. Mike Vrabel is a defensive coach. Ben Johnson is an offensive coach. Steve Spagnuolo is a defensive coach. They need to make a decision. I do believe that you need to make a decision of what direction you want to go. And if you're bringing in a young quarterback, I think the best direction is going to be to bring in an offensive coach. Now, the other thing that I've put out there on different radio shows is I really truly believe the Raiders, if I was in charge, I would move away from, and I know Ben Johnson's the hot topic and he's the hottest candidate and what he did with Detroit's offense. And there was one point where Jared Goff was shipped off to Detroit to the abyss and he resurrects his career and now could possibly win a Super Bowl. So I love what Ben Johnson's doing, but first-year head coaches go through growing pains. And when you pair a first-year head coach with a first-year quarterback, I think that's a difficult position to be in. So perhaps if I could choose, I would go in a different direction where you have a coach that has coaching experience. I like the names, like Mike Vrabel, even though he's a defensive guy, I would prefer offensive guy. How about a Pete Carroll? He's interviewing with the Bears. look around the division, look around the AFC West. All coaches that are on their second stint, and all three teams made the playoffs. Andy Reid, second stint with the team, right? You got Sean Payton, made the playoffs, second stint with the team, took the Saints to the Super Bowl. And then you got Jim Harbaugh, took the 49ers to the Super Bowl, and now in this first year has his team in the playoffs. So I think your best chance to quickly turn around a franchise is to bring in a coach that has head coaching experience, not just coordinator experience, and then match them with a strong young quarterback or a really strong free agent quarterback. And the Raiders have a lot of cap space. They're predicted to have a lot of cap space, somewhere around 120 million. So they could afford to go out and possibly, get a quarterback that's out there. And so I think that's the recipe personally. I like the Liam Cohens of the world. That's great. He was only offensive coordinator for 1 year. Baker Mayfield had a great year in Tampa Bay under him. I just think it would be smart. I like a Doug Peterson because of his former coaching experience. So I just think that should be a priority if I was the one choosing. And you can tell why. You got to compete with these guys in the AFC West. That's why you're so good. You have strong opinions. Amber Theoharris is our guest. Let me stay on Pete Carroll for a moment. I break up coaches into three categories. Either a culture guy who can come in with the culture, have everybody run through a wall. We had that with Antonio Pierce. Really good at that. Pete Carroll does that at the highest level. Then X's and O's whiz guys. The whiz kid from McVay to Kyle. They can draw the plays, and we'll see. Vrabel's a culture guy, in my opinion. But if you can find the coach who could do all three, who can call plays and be a rah-rah guy, keep a team together, and put it all together, that's the premier head coach. And I agree with you. The young candidates, if you're going to take a first-time coach who's never coached an NFL team but has been a part of as a coordinator, you got to get that right, and you got to understand there's going to be growing pains. This organization had John Madden as the youngest coach, Hall of Famer. Tom Flores underneath him, Hall of Famer. John Gruden, youngest coach at the time, came in. He eventually won the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. It's hard to do that, Amber, and you're right about that. Veteran coaches at this time where the organization is in Las Vegas could be the right way to go. And I left out Dan Quinn, second-time coach, right? So Dan Quinn and what he's doing with the Commanders, and I think they're a blueprint where you can have a defensive-minded head coach like Dan Quinn, but you bring in an elite offensive coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury, who was a former head coach. So you have two strengths and then a top draft pick. That's the combination. And also, there's new ownership with the Commanders, which I think changed a lot for them. But you could also parallel that to the Raiders and say Tom Brady's inclusion in the ownership group, now does add a different dynamic, one of experience and the greatest of all time. So I think if they get the right, to me, a veteran coach, I do like. I'm going to throw another name out there for you. I don't know if I've heard anybody talk about this. How about Mike Tomlin? How about you trade for Mike Tomlin? He has never had a losing season with the Steelers, right? This is a winning coach, but I think especially if they lose in the playoffs, which I think they will in the first round, I think it's time for them to possibly part and maybe a new scene for Mike Tomlin. If I'm the Raiders, I take a swing at him. I say, hey, let's see if we can get him. Let's do a home run swing. See if we can trade for him. Because could you imagine that's a culture guy? That's an that's all three that you were just talking about. So is Pete Carroll. I like guys like that. I like Mike Vrabel too. I think he's gritty. He took the Titans from nothing to the AFC Championship. I do think that when he interviews on Thursday, tomorrow with the New England Patriots, they're going to try to not let him out the door. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Amber Theoharris is our guest. I want to stay with Tomlin and your idea of trading for a coach. For the first time in our careers, we're hearing this more and more. This is now a topic that people will adjust to. Now, it doesn't happen much. There aren't many owners who I think want to trade a successful coach unless they run into the scenario that you talked about where they go to the playoffs and win but can't get the next one, the playoff games, to happen. So that's really interesting. And Amber, you're in this building a lot. You anchor our broadcast after the games, other shows. You know what this building is about. You know the upside of Henderson. You come in from LA, you see this building, you know the stadium well. I think for coaches who haven't seen that and want to come in here and take a look at it,
And then they see Brock Bowers and Max Crosby in the weight room, and they look around at the money and Tom Telesco and Tom Brady's going to be here. Mark Davis will do anything for an owner financially so that coach can go out there and spend money and get what they need. I think that's an important part in this hire, to find that coach who wants that and will embrace it.
Yeah, I think it's a very attractive place. You have all new facilities. You have an owner that you said that will do anything to win. You've got now a true winner in the ownership group that will help guide, as well as probably help in some way. We don't know yet of how to select a quarterback. You got a lot of cap space. You got a really great GM. Tom Telesco, I think that was a really smart move to retain him, because look at his track record of the talent that he has brought in with the Chargers for 11 years and the amount of Pro Bowlers he brought in, comes over here and really just hits a home run on his first draft with the Raiders, especially with Brock Bowers, but also in the later rounds as well. And in the third round, getting DJ Glaze. So I think this is a very attractive place to build also a hometown feel in Vegas. You could really, it's still new. We're still new here, right? And I think this is an opportunity for somebody to come in and say, hey, also that maybe this is the back that I want. This is the direction I want to go. So they would have a lot of say. They wouldn't inherit a quarterback, because think about some of the other jobs that are open right now. You are going to be handed that quarterback. That's not your guy. Whoever goes to the Bears is going to get Caleb Williams. Whoever is going to go to Jacksonville is going to get Trevor Lawrence. They're not going to, whoever goes to the Patriots is going to get Drake May. Coaches like to draft their own guys. And we saw that in Denver with Bo Nix and Sean Payton. Sean Payton had inherited Russell Wilson. Didn't work out. And this is a guy that's been to 2 Super Bowls, and he still doesn't work out because he wanted his guy. He gets his guy, and he's able to do what he wants and goes to the playoffs. So I think this is a very, very attractive place, because also look at the defense. Nobody's talking about this defense that finishes a top 15 defense with a bunch of kids and backups out there, a bunch of rookies and second and third string guys out there, and still finished in the top 15, top half of the NFL. That is really impressive, and there's so much to build on.
Thank you, Amber. I know you got a lot going on in Southern California today. We really appreciate your time. I'll see you soon, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for everything.
All right. Thanks a lot, JT.
You got it. Amber Theoharris is so good. She's been doing this a while on multiple platforms, and she has the pulse of Raider Nation. And she brought up a couple of names here. And that's what's going to be interesting. I don't want to see any coach get fired, ever. I want the coaches to be here for 20 years. But when business decisions are made and you move on, the content that we're going to bring you next really involves the fans. So for everybody who's on our social media channels, let us know who you want. Who do you like? Your Raider Nation. Do you like a coach over another coach? That's really important to me. You can follow me on my YouTube channel at JT the Brick YT. And we're going to do hour number 2, covering all of that from a fan's perspective, taking your phone call. But it's very fluid. There's rumors. There's a lot of NFL insiders giving their opinions. But the Raiders are now in the process of requesting coaches for interviews, and they're going to knock down these interviews left and right and eventually try to figure out who will be the next coach of the famed Silver and Black. This is Raiders Rundown.
This is more than just a game. It's a passion, a lifestyle.
Yeah, that was freezing.
Yeah, literally just.
Yeah, well, she's in that area, man. That area is a freaking apocalyptic.
Yeah, it's weird, man.
Right, Vinnie here?
I think Jason's getting the students. Is it free? She's trying to refresh the Zoom and try to get in.
Okay.
So.
Was that on ours or her show? Yeah.
No idea.
Okay.
But I guess some of the topics are just more of the same.
Good.
Start with like coach candidates.
Yep.
And then the NFL draft. And after that.
He's a big combine guy.
Okay.
And combine and all that. So I'll get into that. Yeah.
And we got a AFC West QB.
Okay.
You think there's anything else that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I had him on last night and he was great. So I kind of know where I want to go with him.
Okay.
We'll hit on all this. And then, just ask, where the organization, he's good on commenting on Brady's potential impact and all that. Other coaches around there. And I think he'll know Liam Cohen a little bit. Okay. Yeah, on that situation. Yep. Thank you.
Somewhere along the line, somebody's gonna make
All right.
Then that game became nuts. It was a war out there. The attitude of that team is find a way to win. That was the most emotional game I ever played.
Yeah, so hope everybody's enjoying this. We're not enjoying the fact that a coach was fired at all. You know how close I was, at least from a head coach perspective with the radio host. But gonna miss Antonio Pierce. He's a good man. He was really good to me. And so was Josh McDaniels, and so was Rich Bisaccia, and you know how close I am with Coach Gruden. When a coach is let go, you thank him. You don't say bad things on social media. You thank him and say, we appreciate your best shot. He gave everyone his best shot.
That was one of the greatest football games.
With the 13th pick, the Las Vegas Raiders select Brock Bowers, tight end, Georgia.
Who's allowed you to transition so easily to the NFL?
I mean, it was a little bit like that the first couple of weeks. I feel like everything's coming really fast.
All right, so Vinny's next. And,
it means a lot having all that trust from the coaches and the other guys on the team just to go out there and do my thing. So, I mean, it's been fun for all of us. Nothing else matters except for just focusing week to week and game to game.
It's caught Bowers on the fly. Chase Walker's ball and knocked out of bounds by McCullough. Blocked by Madison. Outside to help Bowers into crime. Throwing on first down to guess who? Brock Bowers down the sideline. Let it roll. Bowers shoved out of bounds.
Now we seeing one-hand catches. You have across the middle. Ain't fearing nothing. Cross traffic like it.
It's caught good hands by Brock Bowers to bring that one in.
Just win, baby. Commitment to excellence, the will to win.
I love being a Raider. You know that, JT. Everyone who knows me knows it. Raider Nation knows it. So what it means to be a Raider, it's a very fondness, a very strong passion, a pride in my heart. I will fight for this team to the end of my breath.
It's time to have a game. It's time to have a performance for the fans at Allegiant Stadium. Welcome back to this special edition of Raiders Rundown. JT at Raiders headquarters in Henderson. Antonio Pierce was relieved of his duties yesterday. The Raiders are now looking for the next head coach of the Silver and Black. We're live on all Raider platforms. We appreciate all the viewers who come in and everyone listening on the flagship Raider Nation Radio, where you find Vinnie Bonsignore on the morning show, also from the Las Vegas Review-Journal. So, Vinny, I spoke to you last night, and I just want to follow up with your reporting today, as now the Raiders are putting out requests to interview candidates.
Yeah, no doubt about it. They're hitting the ground running. They're going to cast a wide net. They're going to go through an exhaustive process and a thorough process to try to decide and determine who their next football leader is going to be. I expect this to take a little while. And they're not going to leave any stone unturned, not with Mark Davis and Tom Brady now part of the process. But it'll be really interesting. You're going to see some interesting names, and I think that ultimately they're going to land on the guy that they think, or the coach that they believe is going to get them to another level and the next level.
I want to begin with Ben Johnson, and he's the hot name around the league. If you look at the hottest name, it's clearly Ben Johnson, even though there might be candidates and former head coaches who end up being better than him. What are you hearing about this process as he has accepted an invitation, I guess virtually, to sit down with the Silver and Black?
Yeah, and I think if you're Ben Johnson, you are exactly that. You're the hottest coaching candidate probably out there from the in terms of the offensive or the coordinator field of candidates. And he showed last year that he's not going to just jump at any chance. He had opportunities to be a head coach last year in the last cycle, but opted to stay in Detroit because for whatever reason he had misgivings or apprehensions about those opportunities. So he's going to be as thorough as the clubs are, and I know that he's going to pretty much, or everybody with an opening is going to reach out to him. That's how that goes. But I think he's going to be really selective himself. So it'll be interesting to see what his thoughts are. And you have to understand that in these types of situations, yes, it's the teams that are interviewing the candidates, but it's just as much the candidates interviewing the teams because they want to put themselves in the best possible opportunity as well.
Vinny, you were absolutely the first on your radio show on Raider Nation Radio to mention Pete Carroll. And I love the deep dive. You go back with him, you know him, you understand what he's done in the past, and especially how he's competed and beat the great coaches in the AFC West. He did a lot. He did it on a consistent basis. Where is his mind at now with his age? I know he's got tremendous energy and his potential interest with the Silver and Black.
Yeah, it's been expressed to me that there is interest on Pete Carroll's part with the Raiders, and he definitely wants to get back into coaching after taking a year off after the end in Seattle. And this is a candidate that maybe unlike Ben Johnson, Liam Cohen, who's getting ready to first go around as a head coach, and are probably looking at situations that maybe have a quarterback already in place or some pieces in place that they feel are going to put them in a good spot to win sooner rather than later. I think Pete Carroll, he's somebody that loves a challenge. He loves a rebuild. So I don't think he's going to be dissuaded by what the quarterback situation might be. And I'm not just talking about the Raiders, but other opportunities that he might have. I think for him, it's that rebuild. It's putting his stamp on a new program and getting that program built to another level. I think that's what's always attracted Pete Carroll to certain situations, and I think for that reason, the Raiders would be high on his list, I would imagine.
Vinnie Bonsignore is our guest. I want to get to Aaron Glenn, who played in New Orleans and Jacksonville. I think New Orleans wants him badly, and obviously Jacksonville's got an excellent roster. We just saw Jacksonville recently at Allegiant Stadium, but you know what I like about him, Vinny, is the energy to be the culture guy, to come in here with his vision, and he's a tough guy, and his teams play violently. And they did for Antonio Pierce too. But then if you pair him with a young offensive coordinator and get a quarterback, he can focus on the defense if you have that special offensive coordinator. So I want to know what you think of him, his track record, and I think he's going to become a head coach, no doubt about it. And if the Raiders want him, they're going to have to compete with a couple other franchises.
Yeah, no doubt about it. As will be the case with a number of these assistant coach candidates that are out there. And I'm with you, Aaron Glenn. He's not a proven commodity as a head coach, but the work that he did with the Detroit Lions defense that was decimated by injuries, and I think they struggled there for a little while, understandably so, given all the personnel losses that they had. But the game plan that he put together to stop the Vikings on Sunday night it says a lot about Aaron Glenn and the way he was able to rally that group in spite of the injuries and win a game that they had to have. Now they're going to go into the playoffs still wounded, but with a lot of confidence after shutting down a really prolific Minnesota Vikings offense. And I think he's ready to become the leader of his own team. It'll be interesting to see how that all falls out. Obviously, the Raiders have requested permission. I would expect that he's going to sit down and talk with the Raiders as well.
Vinnie Bonsignore, as we wrap it up, the draft, the 6th pick overall, you're going to dive into it heavy, knowing that the fact that the Raiders can easily get a quarterback at 6. They might have to trade up, but they're trading up from 6, not 13 or 24. So as I look at the teams in front of them, the Jags have a quarterback, so do the Patriots. The Giants are definitely going to get a quarterback. The Browns have the scenario with Deshaun Watson, and the Titans are definitely going to take a quarterback, I believe, or they can get a veteran. What do you suggest Raider fans concentrate on here up until April on what Tom Telesco can do with the help of Tom Brady and everybody who's going to be in that room?
Yeah, as it relates to the top 2 college quarterback prospects, Cam Ward from the University of Miami and Shedeur Sanders from Colorado, I wouldn't expect either to fall to number 6. So if the Raiders do fall in love with either one or the other or both, it's probably going to have to be a trade-up scenario. Now, saying that, it's different than last year where going from 13 to 1, 2, or 3 that just wasn't going to happen. Not with the Washington Commanders, the Cleveland or the Chicago Bears, and the New England Patriots needing quarterbacks just as badly as the Raiders did. I would expect that there's going to be a little bit more leeway this year and maybe an easier path potentially to draft that quarterback. We have to see, Shedeur Sanders, Deion Sanders, does he want, his son to go to Tennessee or to the Cleveland Browns? That has to be taken into account as well. I do expect if there's a situation that they don't like or they're a little bit apprehensive about, that then you might see an Eli Manning situation with the Chargers and the Giants back in the day. So that all has to play out. It's still really early in that stage. I know Tom Telesco and his group are just starting now the real deep dive into the college prospects. Obviously, the scouts have been on that for more than a year now, but this is the time of year where the coaches and the general manager and that side of the building really start doing their deep dive. And we don't know what Tom Telesco and his group think about the quarterbacks this year, the top two quarterbacks, whether they have their eye on a Jackson Dart from Ole Miss or Jalen Milroe from Alabama. That's still all TBA, but I think they're in a pretty decent position one way or another in this draft to be able to get a quarterback that they like.
Absolutely. And whoever they get, they're going to have to park them and develop them. And that has to be done correctly, no doubt about that. Vinny, real quick one. The last one is the AFC West. 3 teams in the playoffs. It happened quicker than I expected, especially with the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh. And Sean Payton took a lot of risks by getting rid of Russell Wilson, who's also in the playoffs, going with Bo Nix. So the Raiders are keeping an eye on that division, and they're only going to get better, those teams, so the Raiders have their hands full.
Yeah, and, they lost some ground this year. Let's be honest. Those were 2 teams that the Raiders, they didn't have a great record last year, but they were better than the Chargers and the Denver Broncos. And now they wake up, in early January, and 2 teams that they were better than are now in the playoffs. Now, a couple of things. Number one, that tells you that you can turn it around pretty quickly. I think the Raiders believe that could happen, for them as well. But the fact of the matter is, 3 other teams in their division are now in the playoffs. That's a daunting task, and I think it played a little bit into the decision to move on from Antonio Pierce because they couldn't afford to wait to see if he completed that learning curve while the rest of the AFC West just kept moving further and further with no guarantees that Antonio Pierce was going to do that. They pulled the plug on that. They want to go get a coach that they feel puts them in better position, not only to deal with the rest of the NFL, but certainly with their division.
Thank you, Vinny. Your reporting is outstanding. Your content on the morning show, we count on it. Thanks for doing this today with such a busy schedule. We appreciate you.
I appreciate it, JT. Have a great show.
You got it. That's Vinnie Bonsignore. Great. He's got a lot of information here. As we said, it's very fluid. Stay with Raiders.com, the Raiders YouTube channel, all of that to make sure you're getting up-to-date content, especially on X and Facebook, wherever you get your Raiders information. I'm jumping off. I'm going to do another hour taking phone calls. You can follow me on YouTube at JT the Brick YT. And thanks to everybody at Silver and Black Productions. And I also want to thank former head coach Antonio Pierce for his time in this studio and what he was able to do with me while he was here. We're going to do another hour coming up next for everybody on the Raiders YouTube channel. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. More to come at Raiders.com. All right, hour number 2. Get ready. Radio only. Radio. Nice job, everyone. Put that in the can. If I get a little loud here with the callers, I apologize. Hey, Bobby, you there? Bobby, you there? Okay. All right, can I get rundown programming out of my ear? Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thanks. So what's happening? What's new? Are you excited for a football weekend? Are you ready to roll? What's happening? I'm up to date on the TV show Landman. I love Billy Bob and Landman. I'm watching Lioness now. Lioness, not bad. Good start. Very violent. Lioness. What else? Feels like the weekend should be here. It does not feel like a Wednesday. It feels like a Friday. Yeah, no spoilers from me. I think the team on upset alert is the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota going into LA, man. It's not going to be easy. Notre Dame, Ohio State. Yeah, I'm going to go against you on that, Big D. I like Penn State if their defensive edge rusher plays in that game. And I hope Texas loses at all costs because they beat my son's ASU, and that targeting call should have been called. Bobby, you there?
Hey, Tom, sweet ride. Thanks, Jim.
Hey, Tom, sweet ride.
That's my ex-girlfriend. Thanks.
All right, am I supposed to be hearing Bobby?
Did he win the lottery?
Bobby, can you hear me and
I
talk
just got a
back?
sweet loan from One Nevada Credit Union. Smart move, Tom. Thanks. They have great terms, low rates, and an easy approval process. All I needed to do was find a sweet ride. Get a sweet loan for a sweet ride at onenevada.org. Federally insured by NCUA.
1877 Cars for Kids. KARS Cars for Kids. 1877
Lotus Broadcasting, Bobby. Anybody hear me? Okay, that's the first time I heard you. So you hit the button right.
Your car can be picked up as soon as the next day.
Okay.
Receive a tax deduction
Follow
and
me
vacation
with
voucher.
the open.
1877 Cars for Kids. Donate your car today.
Now accepting donations.
Did you have the Rappaport or anything I
or
sent?
any kind of real estate.
Cristo Rey St. Viator College Preparatory High School, located in North Las Vegas, is accepting applications for the 2025-2026 school year. The opportunity for an affordable private college preparatory education, coupled with a real-world corporate.
I don't know why you're not
experience,
getting
is
these
waiting for
tweets
you.
I'm sending you from
With a 100%
Rappaport and
graduation
everything. I
rate,
sent it to you
100% of
last
seniors
night.
are accepted
You're
into
not
at
getting
least
them
one
anymore. I don't
four-year
understand.
university. To learn more about the school or schedule a campus tour, please call 702-844-2019 or visit CristoRaySt.Viator.org today. That's 702-844-2019.
Don't miss the Rich Eisen Show following the morning tailgate. Weekday mornings at 10 here on Raider Nation Radio 920 AM, KRLV Las Vegas.
Welcome back to the JT the Brick Show, brought to you by Modelo Especial, the new #1 beer in the U.S.
It's the JT the Brick Show, broadcasting live from the Finley Cadillac Performance Studio.
Raiders bring a blitz. He takes it up the middle, and he's wrapped up from behind. Max Crosby.
Your silver and black home to sound off for over 25 years.
Open at the 35, racing to the 20, 10, touchdown Raiders.
And now, here's JT the Brick.
Out of the gate, hour number 2, JT just coming off a special edition of Raiders Rundown, which aired exclusively on the Raiders YouTube channel and all their platforms. So that's a big audience. There are millions of people potentially on all the Raiders platforms combined. We just did an hour of that, was caller free. So we didn't have any calls, and I want to rock this hour. I need to talk to some fans. I need to hear from Raider Nation, from the Black Hole, from the Pacific Northwest, down to the fans I ran into in Florida when we played Miami and throughout the East Coast and the flyover in between. So let's get going. You got to have an opinion now. Antonio Pierce was relieved as head coach of the Raiders, let go, and now the Raiders start the hunt for the next head coach of the Silver and Black. And you better believe your opinion matters on this topic. What coach do you want? What type of coach do you want? I got about 6 offensive coordinators in front of me on a list that we talked about that last hour with Amber Theoharris, who joined us, also Vinnie Bonsignore and Paul Gutierrez. So I got the names, but I don't know who you want. So as I always say with all my shows, sound off like you got a pair. There's been a lot of Raider fans who have been really chippy, really aggressive over the last 6 months. I'm dealing with fans who loved AP. Oh my God, I love AP, AP, I love you. And those same human beings and fans 4 months later said, get him out of here, get him out of here, get him out of here. And I've been dealing with that. Call it Raider therapy, whatever you want. Okay, so now he's gone. I wish he stayed. I mean, I like to coach a lot. I sat down with him every week, but I understand why Mark Davis made the move. What he saw wasn't good enough, and he didn't believe that it would change quick enough to win for you, the fans of the Raider Nation. Look, when it comes to Mark, I defend the Shield. I defend the owner. He's a friend of mine, and he's my boss. And I'll say the same thing again with Mark. He wants to win. He will pull the trigger quickly if he's hearing and seeing that the system isn't working. You might not like that. You might want to see a coach have 3, 4, 5 years. And I understand that. And that's fair. And some organizations do it that way. But when Mark looks and makes a decision and then watches how it develops, he evaluates everybody. And Mark Davis told you he was going to evaluate Antonio Pierce and the staff, and he made his decision. It's big boy radio. Coaches come, coaches go. We thank them all. We spent an hour thanking Antonio Pierce. How could you not? How could you not thank him? All the guy did was live and bleed silver and black. And he tried. He had a 10-game losing streak. They lost the last game of the year, not because they mailed it in, not because they weren't trying, because they didn't have the players. They were injured. They didn't have the quarterback. And when I say that, I know Aiden O'Connell is the quarterback, and he will compete to be the quarterback of the future. I think Aiden's a good young player. But we all know what Antonio Pierce did not have. We all know what he did not have. Look at the year of Brock Bowers under Antonio Pierce. Max Crosby had a great year until he got injured. Look at the play of Robert Spillane. He was fantastic this year with Trayvon Merrick, coached underneath Antonio Pierce. But it just got to the point where the Raiders were not improving at the level that the owner thought of, and especially in the AFC West, where all 3 teams in the division are in the playoffs and the Raiders got swept by the entire AFC West. So they made a change. I think everybody can understand why the change was made, but you could still really love the coach. And I respect you if you call me today saying, I wish they would have kept him. I'm all right with that. And if you call me saying you want Pete Carroll over Aaron Glenn, I'm good with that. But I don't need a mental break. People think I do. But people, JT, how do you do it? How do I do what? I fire up a machine. My microphones work. I step here and I go big for a couple hours and I go home. And I want this team to win. And I've been here for 27 seasons, and I've seen a lot of coaches, more than you probably, come and go. And every time they leave, I have the same feeling in my gut. I'm sorry to see them leave. I'm sorry for them, and they all end up doing great things afterwards. They all either get paid when they leave, they hook up with another team, they have another opportunity. I've always believed throughout my life, because of my family, and radio especially, radio can be hard, media can be hard, that when one door closes, a door equal or bigger opens. You just got to find that door. Some people walk through it fast, some people bang it down. Don't worry about Antonio Pierce. As much as I got to know him, he'll be fine, and he'll coach again, and I wish him and his family nothing but the absolute best. But now we got to move on, and that's what happens in life. You move on from a job to a job to a show to a show. And I want to know from you who you want as the head coach, and you need to be fairly quick on this. I don't believe the Raiders are going to hire a coach in the next 2 days, 5 days, 10 days. There's a big process in the NFL. The Rooney Rule, who you interview, when you interview them. The news today is Ben Johnson has accepted a virtual interview with the Raiders coming up on Friday. I think he's the number one candidate, not for the Raiders, but the entire league. It's the race to get Ben Johnson. I think the front runner is Chicago. I think the Bears in that division want Ben Johnson to go fix Caleb Williams. But I don't think Ben Johnson likes the hierarchy of the management of that team. It is kind of toxic now, what's happening with Ryan Poles. You know, when you have a GM or a president of football operations and they continue to fire coaches, the new coach that comes in says, wait a second, you're the guy who's firing all the other coaches who are my friends. Why would I want to come here? So I don't know where Ben Johnson's going to end up, but it seems like he's going to get hired. Also, I'm coming around to Aaron Glenn more and more. I don't think the Raiders need a defensive head coach. But if they get Mike Vrabel, or if they get Aaron Glenn, or Pete Carroll, who's more on the defensive side than offense, I'm fine with that. Those are all really good candidates. And whoever they take, I'd run through a wall for him. Aaron Glenn is coaching now. A request went out to talk to him. And then how about the name Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator of Kansas City, back-to-back Super Bowls, all the Super Bowls he's won with Kansas City and the New York Football Giants. And he was a mentor to Antonio Pierce. One thing we know about Spagnuolo, if Spagnuolo was serious and the Raiders weren't, he got hired here as a head coach, we know that Spags wants to be a head coach. He really does. And number two, he brings everything from Kansas City, and the Raiders have to beat Kansas City. I thought that was an intriguing name that just came out today. There's no news on Bill Belichick. Come on. He just accepted in a press conference at North Carolina. Will he get out of his contract? Yeah, I think he'll coach there a year, and he'll probably come running back to the NFL. And then the other candidates who are available and could be the candidates. Look, the Raiders want to make sure they get their guy. And the problem is there are 6 vacancies here for head coach. And you might have guy number 1, coaching candidate number 1, then number 2, then number 3. And I remember the story of Steve Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin. When Mr. Davis brought up Steve Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin, both from USC, in the hopes of hiring Steve Sarkisian, who left the building. Lane Kiffin stayed, and Mr. Davis brought him in, and Lane Kiffin wowed him on the whiteboard, and Lane Kiffin was a young coach with tremendous upside, and he got hired. It didn't work out. Remember, Mr. Davis broke out the projector. I was in the room that day, and now Lane Kiffin's one of the premier play callers in all of football, I think college or pro. So the Raiders have had a history of hiring young coaches. John Madden was the youngest coach ever hired at that point in the NFL. He won a Super Bowl. John Gruden was the youngest coach ever at the time. He won a Super Bowl, not with the Raiders, but Tampa Bay. But we all know how great Coach Gruden was, and he might be bouncing back around the league. Wink, wink. But then I go to these other candidates. Liam Cohn seems to be someone out of Tampa Bay that everybody is interested in. I mean, everybody is interested in him because he worked with the Rams under Sean McVay, and he's doing a great job with Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield. So if the Raiders hired Liam Cohn, it's not a flashy name, but he might be the perfect fit if the Raiders draft a quarterback. Todd Monken, a top coaching candidate from Baltimore. He's worked with Lamar Jackson at a very high level. I don't think Doug Peterson will come through in this cycle and get hired as a head coach again. He's a name that's out there. And as Vinnie Bonsignore told me last hour, I thought it was really interesting. The Pete Carroll, you can convince me really easy on Pete Carroll. I think my opinions are strong, and there are things I get right. There are things I get wrong. But if you told me at the start of next season, Pete Carroll was the head coach and Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback, and he not getting paid, no 50, 60 million Aaron Rodgers, but the Aaron Rodgers who threw 4 touchdowns last week, or Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold was the quarterback, and Tom Telesco spent a lot of money to get that, along with a rookie quarterback who's going to get groomed. I'm good with Pete Carroll. I'm great with Mike Vrabel, who's very tight with Tom Brady. Extremely tight. Everybody says, well, Mike Vrabel, he's going to the Patriots. Well, let Tom Brady get on the phone. And I heard Peter Strager earlier today and others talking. A lot of people's minds are blown about this Tom Brady story. Tom Brady and Mark Davis are new, great friends. Mark's known Tom longer than you think. Tom Brady is going to be in our building where I'm sitting today. Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time. He's a successful entrepreneur. And man, did he buy into the Raiders at the right time? Did he buy in at the right time? Tom Brady, I would assume, is going to have a major role. I don't know how many days he's going to be in an office, how many days he's going to be on Zoom, but there's no doubt that Tom Brady's got a bunch of big football games he's calling for Fox, including this weekend with Philadelphia and Green Bay. He'll have the divisional round. He'll have the NFC championship game. And Tom Brady will be calling the Super Bowl for Fox as a rookie broadcaster. I would assume Tom Brady's pretty busy now, but he has time to talk with Mark from midnight to 2 a.m. because Mark's great at that. And they'll figure it out, along with Tom Telesco, who was retained as the general manager. So there's a couple of interesting things that are happening right now, as I'm always honest to you. It was a very difficult last couple of months when it has come to engagement with Raider fans. Never in person, because everybody in person's great. JT, I'll buy you Modelo. No, let me buy you a Tito's. Everybody's great in person. But with the social media aspect and fans really triggered about everything that's happening in their lives as Raider fans, I've come to understand that better. I'm not a tanking guy, never was, told you that. Told you Antonio Pierce was trying to save his job. He wasn't going to tank. You didn't believe me. I told you what was happening. They weren't going to lose 13 games in a row to end the season. The Raiders have the 6th draft pick. Calm down. That's a great pick. The Raiders have a ton of money in free agency. The Raiders have Max Crosby, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, Colton Miller, Jackson Powers-Johnson, A.J. Cole, Daniel Carlson. They got some really good players. They got to retain good players like Robert Spillane and hope that they can get him to come back. And then they're going to spend. I don't see a point here where Tom Telesco is going to say, hey, look, I'm looking to save more money for the year after next. I don't see that. I think Tom Telesco knows how hot the seat was for Antonio Pierce the last couple of weeks, and he's going to want to win. So I have confidence in Tom Telesco with this first pick at number 6. And it'll be a game changer, and hopefully it'll be a quarterback. So that's where we stand today for about another 45 minutes. PT's Fuels the Monologue, 5 to 7, midnight to 2. The best happy hour in town. If you're looking for a place to go watch these college football playoff games, why don't you head out to PT's, order up some great food, watch the games there. The service will be incredible. The Great American Pub, one of the new locations here on the 215 in Buffalo. And you can get right through to me at X, at JT the Brick. So I'm rolling today, man. When they asked me to come in here and anchor a big show today and we knocked it out, I'm ready to go. I might even crack a Modelo tonight. I might have me a Modelo late night tonight because, God, I deserve it. I haven't stopped working all week. I did Mad Dog Monday night, Sunday night, Tuesday night. I'm doing it Saturday, 9 a.m. to noon. And I appreciate every opportunity I get, everyone, to be sitting in front of you on YouTube, JT the Brick YT, or listening on our flagship station, Raider Nation Radio. All right, so Bobby's feeding me some phone calls. Mark in the Bay Area is gone. I would have guessed that 1,000,000 times out of 1,000,000. Raider Kev in Arlington, Texas. How are you, Kev?
JT, listen, man, I've been a listener and followed you for over a decade, man. I remember when you was a caller. And that's just how long I've been rolling with you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to take your lead when it comes to thanking AP. AP did something for the Raider Nation that was desperately needed. He unified us. He gave us that passion that we needed. And he gave us, I feel, the correct direction for the fan base to really get behind this team. I wish he would have been given a true chance to build. I think he was given a shot, and what I mean by that, he was like, fourth quarter, let's get him in there, let him see what he can do. Hail Mary, right?
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't given an opportunity to build something. I would have loved to see what he would have been able to do with a true number 1 quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
What he would have been able to do if we didn't have the injuries on our defense. If he would have had a true chance, I think this man could have really done something special. Let's move on. They've made the decision to move on, so let's move on. And what I want and what I desire, I'm not going to give a name, but what I want is stability. What I want is for Mark to come in here, whoever his advisors are, give him the advice of a guy that can truly build this team. Mm-hmm. Give us stability. I'm tired of these 1 and done, 2 and done.
Yep.
I'm tired of that.
We all are.
Stability in this organization, and I want something that we can feel good about. And listen, if it takes 2 years, if it takes 3 years, that's fine. I just want the correct direction for this nation because that's what we deserve.
Okay, thank you for that phone call, and I agree with a lot of what you had to say. Let me stop the show for a second and remind you what Mark Davis is trying to do from Oakland as he took over ownership after his dad passed away until now. He's desperately trying to win at all costs. No one can argue that. If you know Mark, if you've met Mark, if you've heard him speak, Mark says, what I don't know, and I'm going to ask other people to help. John Gruden was the best example of that. They're really tight. He brought Coach Gruden back because he believed in his vision. Okay, Mike Mayock was retained. He was an up-and-coming name. New personnel in the draft. Well, it didn't work out. Josh McDaniels came in because Mark vetted him along with a lot of other coaches and believed that he had the vision to do what he successfully did, obviously with Belichick in New England, bring in Dave Ziegler and try to build the Raiders that way. I like Dave Ziegler a lot. Coach McDaniels was great to me. Good man. Didn't work. Mark quickly moved on from that. And then when it comes to Antonio Pierce, what I find interesting here is if you look at what happened, because Coach Pierce is really a deserving man going forward in the league. There was no chance that Antonio Pierce, zero, was on the path to becoming a head coach as quickly as he did if it wasn't for Mark Davis. Mark Davis made him the interim head coach. He could have gave that to Patrick Graham, right? He could have brought in Norvell Turner to do that. Could have did a lot of different things. He gave Antonio Pierce that opportunity. And Antonio Pierce ran through the wall for Mark Davis. Got the Raiders to where the Raiders are, connected with their fans, coming off the Patriot type of experiment that didn't work. Antonio Pierce was dialed in with Raider Nation 1,000%. And he had a lot of bad luck. A lot of things went against Coach Pierce. Now, were there mistakes with down and distance, timeouts, adjustments? Absolutely there were. And if Antonio Pierce had another year, 2-3 years, it would have got better and better and better. But you got to understand there's new eyes on this now with Tom Brady and Tom Telesco. And Antonio Pierce, I wish would have stayed here. I would have loved to have worked with him again because he was kind to me and very good. But business decisions happen. And when Mark sees something and he consults with others and they stand around him, the people he trusts, if his gut feeling is we're not going to get where we need to go, he makes changes. And that is something that people should debate. They're talking about it on every platform. Stephen A. Smith just gave me a shout out on TV today as we talk back and forth about the franchise. When it comes down to this, not every coach is going to work. But you know something? A lot of great coaches have been fired. A lot of great coaches have been fired. And they come back and they do great things. And that's what we hope for when it comes to Antonio Pierce going forward. All right, let's get out to Tim in Vegas on 920. Tim, thanks for waiting. Go ahead. And Tim is gone there. Okay, I need a break. 702-365-9200 is the number. If you want to jump here on YouTube, JT the Brick YT. If you're a caller with the balls to stand up for what you said, this would be the show to do it because I have the balls to stand up for what you have to say, and I'm inside headquarters. So that's pretty cool today. And then we'll figure out what we're going to do the rest of the week here because things are moving fluidly, and we're going to get it to you first here on the flagship of the Silver and Black. Yeah, well, two out of three callers weren't there.
You can stay in touch with your favorite stations and shows no matter your location by simply downloading the free LV Sports Network app for both iPhone and Android. Go to the App Store or Google Play and search LV Sports Network. Download and you are good to go. Raider Nation Radio, ESPN Las Vegas, Fox Sports Las Vegas, 1230 The Game. It's all part of the LV Sports Network and can all be streamed live on the LV Sports Network app. Download it today.
Boyd Gaming is the official and
All right, everybody. You don't want to hear 1-800 Cars for Kids. All right, man. How's everyone doing? You know, the callers in sports radio in general now, the callers are sucking more than they've ever sucked. You know, you get a Chris in West Oakland, you get a Richie Rich on my national show, John and Frazier. Everybody else who wants to call into radio, you'd be appreciated. I don't need the calls. You see me, I don't stop talking. But we like to have people that are good at what they do. And that's going away because most channels don't take calls anymore. There are national shows that don't take a call for years. So we get frustrated from time to time. We got to hang up on callers. They're not ready. They're on speakerphone. They don't add anything. So if you ever want to become a caller, hit me in the chat and we'll get you going. And if you don't want to call and you just sit back and listen, we greatly appreciate that. I'll go to the bottom of the hour, and then we'll go to break, and then or a little after that, and then we'll go to Wasserman. Okay. Hey, Big D, has my son come in here and cleaned up a couple of the children here? What's going on? What am I sensing here? Thanks. Donate your car today. That commercial's been running longer than any commercial in radio history.
Homes, buildings, or any kind of real estate.
Boyd Gaming is the official and exclusive local casino partner of the Las Vegas Raiders and Allegiant Stadium. Bring your friends, have some fun, but always bet on black. Visit their 10 casinos across the valley. Don't let the game get out of hand. Please bet responsibly.
Welcome back to the JT the Brick Show, brought to you by Tito's Handmade Vodka, America's original craft vodka. Visit titosvodka.com.
I know my influence. I know what winning looks like. But at the end of the day, I strictly am focused on what I do best. And being at my best is going to help my teammates, my coaches, being a leader, taking care of the things I can control.
Yeah, that's Max Crosby on the SiriusXM podcast that he does. Let's go. Max will be fine. As I've been saying, knowing Max, he won the Commitment to Excellence Award again, 4th year in a row. We got news on the Commitment to Excellence Award banquet, which I can't wait to tell you about. I've emceed that 17 or 18 times in Oakland. And any Raider Booster fan that knows what that's about, we're going to have it in Vegas. And I'm working with my friend Jenny Hamilton on this, and we'll have details for you. You have got to come to this event in Vegas for Max Crosby, the Commitment to Excellence Awards. We'll jump in on that. I want to stop the show for a second, and I'm thinking about everybody affected by the wildfires that are happening in LA. And it's a fluid situation. And my wife and I lived in LA for 10 years in Sherman Oaks and went to the Pacific Palisades often in Malibu. The co-author of my book, The Handoff, Alan Eisenstock, a dear friend of mine, was right in the middle of that. I do not know. I know he evacuated. I don't know if his home survived. And I didn't really sleep last night because we were watching the live feed on ABC 7 on our smart TV. We're able to just download the LA News, ABC, and they went wall-to-wall coverage of it. And I knew those neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods are gone. And when I lived in a nice neighborhood like that, not near the beach, but in Sherman Oaks, and when you hear about mountain fires or forest fires, they usually happen in the mountains where no one's at. Now we're seeing more and more fires that are jumping freeways that are on the beach. So these fires that are supposed to start in canyons and up in the mountains and the hills where not a lot of people live. Remember the Santa Rosa fire? Remember the fire that Cliff Branch had to run from with just his rings and his clothes? We've had a lot of fires here. And this one, they all hurt. They all really hurt. And I was thinking of my buddy Alan Eisenstock, the author. And when we put my book together, The Handoff, I spent a lot of time in LA, and we would sit in his home and we would go over the book, and he would be interviewing me and we'd be coming up with certain things. Anyway, this guy is an author and his whole house was just full of books. I mean, thousands, not hundreds, and his notes. And I felt so bad last night thinking about that. I couldn't sleep. And I texted him and he got back to me and he evacuated, and I haven't heard from him since. Then we had Amber Theoharris on in the first hour. She lives in that region, and there's ash all over her car, and she explained what she's going through. And there's a lot of people that have been listening to my show and can hear us. And if I've never met you before, I hope that you're able to get through this, because when you live in a neighborhood near the beach, okay, there could be talk of a hurricane in Florida, a tsunami, God forbid. You don't think that a fire is going to get down to the water and you have to evacuate to the water. And that's what happened in Lahaina, Maui. And that had a deep effect on me because Maui's my happy place. I go there often. And Lahaina was wiped out. And the Pacific Palisades were wiped out for a lot of people in 24 hours. So I hope everybody's okay. And one last thing to these firefighters. And I say this, if you know me, if you've been listening to me for 25 minutes or 25 years, I am pro-cop, I'm pro-fireman, I'm pro-military, and I don't move on that in any time. I'm pro-cop, pro-military, pro-fireman, emergency service worker. And when the alert went out last night that they needed everyone with firefighter experience, not just the firefighters, men and women on the job, but if you knew how to handle a hose or could help get there, oh boy, that's when I said to my wife, this is serious. So I'm checking in with a lot of people today. And I want to, again, thank the firefighters. If you have a young son or daughter, or you're listening and you're young, in your teens, go become a firefighter, police officer, emergency worker. They are the true heroes in our country. They run towards the harm. They don't run away. And they run to where the problems are. And I think those firefighters who are working out west here, man, they're our heroes. And I hope we can do something for them at a game, or I could help out raising money or do anything, because this is having a deep effect on a lot of people. 702-365-9200. Get on the phones if you want a head coach. It's amazing how many people want to talk to me when there's nothing going on, but now everything's going on. Who do you want as the head coach is the topic forever now. It's not the quarterback. It's not the draft. The next topic that I will pound into the ground is who is the next head coach of the Silver and Black. Here's Robert in Portland. How are you, Robert?
Real good. Hey, second you on everything you said about the support services. Hey, I just feel that Rabel's probably going to go to Bobby's team. Anyway, if that does take place, I love Pete, but I'm thinking about what I've watched on the Detroit offense, and it's pretty special, JT. They once they got Gibbs, you don't see put down imagination. I admit they got, they went through a little lull there 3 years ago, and they caught fire once Gibbs was aboard. I just want to see a young mind like that. Mm-hmm. I remember what McVay did when he came aboard the Rams. I think you're on to something with Johnson, and I hope they really do bring him aboard if we can't get Vrabel. That's my thought.
Yeah. Let me tell you about this, and I'll go forward. Thanks for the call, Robert. Opens up a line for you, 702-365-9200. Brady, to me, is the X factor. Tom Telesco is very good. Look at his first-round track record. Vegas has everything that a head coach would want. I mean, everything on steroids. You want to live in Southern Highlands in a gated community, get a golf club membership, go out to dinner on the Strip. That does matter. You're a human being. You're coaching 18 hours a day. You want to take your wife out on the Strip. You want to go see a show. That matters. But it doesn't matter to the coach in Green Bay. right? Matt LaFleur doesn't go out to search shows and go to five-star restaurants in Appleton, Wisconsin. And he's making millions of dollars with Green Bay, and they seem to be a perennial good team. This is a selling point that I've been selling hard for 5 years, because as the Raiders were based in Oakland, I was based in Vegas. Not many people knew. I'm surprised, other than the guys in the black hole and the tailgates. I commuted twice a week up to Oakland for 17 years. So if people call me a homer, you're a shill. No, I just want to have a good life and win. That's it. And if you heard me all year long on the post-game show or the pregame show, or here asking Antonio Pierce every question that you could ask him in regards to why they were losing 10 in a row, you know how critical I've been of this team. You know what I want to see. People come up to me all the time and say, JT, I like you because I want to go no huddle and throw it all the time. I said, thanks. You must be listening. I want a violent defense. I want greatness for the Raiders, and it's going to come. And there's been a drought for a while, and everybody's trying to fix it. But there's been much longer droughts around the league historically, from Cincinnati, Detroit, Cleveland, the Chargers. Go up and down on all the teams that haven't won the Super Bowl. Look at some of the droughts of some of the other teams that haven't been in the playoffs recently or won a playoff game. And the Raider drought over the last 20 years has been significant, and everybody's working tirelessly to fix it. There's been a lot of good men and women who were brought into private meetings over the last 20 years to give their opinion on how to win. It's hard to win. And we're at a point now where the most aggressive thing I can say going forward is that the Raiders have to be close to perfect in these next couple of months. They do. In the past, it could be, hey, we're bringing back Gruden, we got Mayock. No. This has to be perfect. It has to be great. Great draft, great free agency, great coaching hire, great staff built to be the coaches. Not good. Not we hope it's good. No, it has to be great. I think everybody understands that. They said that the last couple of times too, and they meant it. But this time, it's more important than ever. And I think it's going to be a quarterback and a head coach. We'll see how it plays out. But you want to win. You're frustrated a lot. We're all frustrated. It's tough to win, and there's no other way to spin it. No other way to spin it. This team has got their back up against the wall, trying to find the right people there. And I have confidence that with Tom Brady being included in the process, with Tom Telesco, who had a good draft, the first 3 rounds of that, and Mark Davis's passion to want to spend money and win, that the Raiders can get it right here. At least I hope that's the case. Stevie G in the Big O of Oakland. What's going on, Stevie?
Hey, man. How you doing? Happy New Year.
You too.
Hey, I'm thinking, there's a slight step back. As Al Davis was bringing in John Gruden, if I remember correctly, he had interviewed him like a couple of times over the past couple of cycles. Like, hey, Gruden, I need this project. I need that project from you, to make sure he was kind of getting himself ready to be that head coach that he finally hired in '98. So I'm hoping that there's some type of that where there's a synergy, right? It's not just, as you said, not just getting the flash in the pan hire who's out this year, who's the hot candidate.
Mm-hmm.
It's, hey, me as the general manager, which is what Al was at the time, as the general manager, is this a coach I can work with? We can have our battles. We can have our agreements, disagreements, so times, all of that. But the synergy of it is that we're bringing in a system. Because clearly Gruden convinced Al that his system would work for him, would win for him. And clearly that took some convincing, but he was able to do it. And then they moved on. So I'm looking for that. I'm looking for not just the coach, not just the GM, but the synergy between.
Well, that's very vague. That's with all due respect, that's very vague. I mean, we got to find out who the candidates are and hire one of these guys. Who are you thinking? I mean, anybody who's going to come in is going to tell Mark Davis what you just said. I'm the guy. I'll have synergy. I'll control the locker room. We'll be great. And my system's going to work. So do you have an idea or someone that you'd like to see as your premier candidate for the job?
You know what? The bottom line is the guy, retread though he may be, he was also an energetic one. Gruden just is part of the fabric and nature of what the Raiders are. It's true. So I don't know how they're going to do that, but whatever it takes to bring some of that synergy back into the mix, because clearly Mark trusted him. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt that when he came in, even though obviously he had an abbreviated second stint, we all know about that. But what he was doing was, again, putting that system in place.
Yep.
And he even said it. He said, hey, Reggie McKenzie can't even draft into a system because we've been all over the place. We're going to do this so this works. And he started it with me, but it then obviously went on to Mayock. But he had something to build upon. And the same thing with Derek Carr. This is how we're going to grow you as a quarterback. These are the tools we're going to surround you with. I mean, Darren Waller came out of nowhere. He didn't come from out of nowhere.
So you want a system guy, and I appreciate your call. Thank you so much. I got to wrap it up here. Bobby's in my ear. You want a system guy, and it sounds like one of the guys that you'd like a lot would be Aaron Glenn of Detroit. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but he's a guy that could come in here with the defensive system that works well with Max and what they have with Christian Wilkins. Can you imagine Aaron Glenn coming in here as the head coach with this group and then him coaching up the corners, and then the Raiders at the 6th pick overall take a great corner that Aaron Glenn can mentor and get him up to speed with Ja'Cory Bennett. You bring back Trayvon Merrick, Isaiah Palomalo, and you got Spillane here. And then you draft 3 more defensive players who can start. Imagine giving that to Aaron Glenn, who I'm starting to like more and more. That could work because he's a culture guy who knows how to draw up a scheme. But then you still have the elephant in the room. What's going to go on with the offense? As I've mentioned to Eric Allen, more so than not, the day they brought in Luke Getsy, I did what I always do. Pleasure to meet you. Let's get on the radio. Let's talk. Nice guy. Okay, he wasn't the fit. They didn't get Cliff Kingsbury. They got Getsy. It didn't work out. But I want an offense that's going to come in, led by Tom Brady's mojo, where Tom Brady, as an owner, goes, yeah, I like that style. I don't exactly know who's going to play or the offensive line, and I'm not putting words in Brady's mouth, but Brady is looking down from the owner's box with Mark if he's not calling games anymore, if he is, and he goes, yeah, that's what I was talking about, Mark, when me, you, and Tom Telesco sat down there and we rebuilt the offense. That's the quarterback we wanted. That's the offensive line we just added to. That's the running back that we brought in. And the Raiders get back to what they did under the greatness of the Raiders and Al Davis, the vertical passing game. We're going to do what we want to do. We're going to throw it, and we're going to throw it. And we're not going to check down. We're going to be efficient on offense. We're going to be violent on the offensive line with bigger players. And when we have to run it on 3rd and 1, our entire stadium's not going to say, oh, my God, here we go. How many times have you sat in Allegiant Stadium in the last 3 years on 3rd and 1 and seen a running back 8 yards deep about to get a handoff up the middle and lose 2 yards? We're done with that. We want to see a quarterback and a coach who are so aggressive, like Ben Johnson with Jared Goff. Jared Goff doesn't have a big personality. Not a big ego guy. Ben Johnson calls the play. They do reverses. They have offensive linemen catching footballs. Penei Sewell catches touchdowns. They got running backs who run violently, and they throw it with Jared Goff all the time. That's what I want to see. It probably won't be Ben Johnson because they think Chicago's going to be the front runner there. But get someone in there. And if it turns out that it's Liam Cohn gets it, and I don't think that will go over great with Raider Nation because Raider Nation doesn't know him. He better come in here and open up the offense. And then if it's Pete Carroll, I was talking about this to someone today, a friend of mine. If Pete Carroll walked through the front doors here, okay, follow me for a minute. Close your eyes unless you're driving. Pete Carroll walked into the building with Raider gear on. He'd take everybody out to lunch in the first 2 days. He'd have this whole city in the palm of his hands. He'd be excited, and then he'd have a great offensive coordinator and a great defensive coordinator because he would demand that or he wouldn't take the job. Patrick Graham, I hope, stays. Imagine Pete Carroll, Patrick Graham, and then a brand new offensive coordinator coming in. Or if Scott and Norv stay here, Pete Carroll is working with them on a new concept of how to play offensive football. It's just got to be great. And I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'll be here for you. At JT the Brick on X, and you should be on our YouTube channel. We had massive numbers today for our show. We're building this thing from scratch, and it's moving along nicely. I'll say goodbye to the bricklayers. Appreciate everybody there. We'll have one more last call for your phone calls. 702-365-9200. Someone surprised me with some energy today and some passion on who they want as the head coach of the Raiders. I mean, it is the Raiders. Commitment to excellence. Let's go get a coach, and let's all make sure we thank Antonio Pierce.
It's the morning tailgate.
111 NFL players.
Thank you, everyone. You're unbelievable the last couple of days. You're always good. We've had a lot of new people in here. Please hit like on the way out. And most importantly, get people to subscribe. Get them to subscribe. So when you subscribe, you get the alerts and you know when we're going big. Appreciate everyone. Have a great day.